What is going on, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are going to uh, work on some automatic re-importing. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to have our editor open, our editor window, whatever you want to call it, uh, open, and make changes to some of the files, and then whenever we click back into the window, it will automatically re-import and uh, change whatever needs to be changed, whatever has been updated. Now, in the last episode, I had a little issue with the double clicking where if you click on it, then you can double click anywhere inside of that window and it'll work. It's because, stupid me, I realized it after I recorded, was I put this right there in front of that when it should be inside of this button. And you actually, if you remember correctly, I was actually going to do that and did not do it. And I was like, I'll just stick it before the button. Yeah, so that was my mistake. So all you have to do is just cut that out and just paste it inside this button before it does the whole select asset thing. So we'll just have to do that with all of these. So this will just take a second. And in this episode, I went ahead and did some of what we're going to be doing today just because I was at the river all weekend and I literally just got back. So I went ahead and flew through it and did one of the assets for the, I guess you would say, the easier assets that we're going to be re-importing. And so we'll just go over that code and get you kind of familiar with how that works. And in the next episode, we will be doing the more complicated things. Like for now, we can do Sprite, we can do GUI, what is it? GUI skin, and stuff like that. But later in the next episode, we will be doing the more complicated things like textures and scripts and all that funness. What in the world happened here? Sprite. Did I just delete it and I didn't? Yeah, I did. Sprites. Dot sprite. Okay. I don't know why I did that. Because textures are a little bit more complicated. So are scripts. And the reason why textures are a little bit complicated is because we're not working with the files themselves. We're using pre-built methods to import our textures from whatever file it is. Okay, that should be it. Alright, and that will fix our double clicking, so we have to actually double click on the element instead of click on the element and then just double click anywhere in that window. Alright, so how this works is, why do I don't know why that's there. Unless I accidentally removed something. I don't think I did. Okay. How this works is we're going to have these two right here. We're going to start with sprite, just so that we have something visual to look at whenever we make changes. We can see it actually working. But we have two things. We have the file that we imported, or that we're getting down here. And then we have the long last modified. Now you might be thinking, well, the file has a last modified variable or method to be able to retrieve the last modified. Well, the issue with that is since we're storing the actual file, we're storing it into here. So whenever we make any changes to it, it updates this. So we don't know what the previous modified was, because it automatically updates here. So it gets lost. So we have to store it right here. Now, there's a couple ways that we can do this, but the way that I'm wanting to do it, at least for this episode, for the time being, I don't know if we'll keep it this way or change it, because the way that I'm doing it, we can actually just use the file that we created instead of creating a new file, which you will see here in just a little bit. We're actually creating a new file to get the last modified. And I don't know if we're going to keep it that way, but we'll see. I'm just going to have it that way for now, just in case, so that we don't have to add more code to a future episode if we end up using it the way that I'm doing it right now. So we have these two right here. Right down here in this else statement, we normally just do BR equals new buffered reader, new file, name plus sprite. So this is how you have it right now. Well, the way that we're doing it right now, is we are storing the new file that we've actually, and what you have would be right here. We're actually just storing that into the file, and then we're getting the last modified and storing that as well. And then saying BR equals new buffered reader, new file reader, F, passing in that file that we stored. So then we don't need this. And that's all it is for the constructor. Now, I have a static refresh all method. I have this setting right up underneath the get method. So it's a static method, so I can just call sprite.refreshAll, and it will refresh all sprites that are currently imported. So what we do is we just loop over all the sprites that we have already imported, and then we're going to try to refresh that sprite. And if not, it's going to throw an IO exception. Now for the refresh method, which is this right here, This is a local void. For here, this is where we're actually going to check whether there is a file, because not all assets are going to have a file. The only assets that are going to have a file are the ones that are inside of your project directory, and it's not going to be inside of your resources folder. You won't get a file for that, and you won't get a file for if it's inside of the jar. So if we do not have a file, for now we're just going to return out of it. We're going to do a couple extra things later, because there's 3 different things that can happen during a refresh. Now, one of them is it could equal null, meaning that we deleted it outside of the editor. So let's say we go into the folder and we actually delete the file out of there, and then we click back in our window. Whenever it checks, it's going to know that it doesn't have a file, so of course it's going to be null. So what we need to do is we need to actually remove that from our editor. So later we're going to be doing more with this, but for now we're just going to return out of the function. So here is what I mean. Here I get file temp equals new file f dot get absolute path. So I'm getting the absolute path of the file that we stored in our constructor. So now we have 2 files that are essentially the exact same thing. And I think it's going to be useful in coming episodes, but we will see. If not, we will just not use temp and just use f, which it's not too much more coding, but yeah. And then we're checking to see if temp does not exist, and if temp does not exist, then return. So for the time being, this is going to do the same thing as this, because if f is null, then temp is null, obviously. The next thing we need to do is we need to check if our last modified from our previous file is different from our last modified of our current file. So if nothing has changed, then we're just going to return, because we don't need to refresh it. So for now, also right here, I'm just setting f to equal temp. So now the stored file is going to be the temporary file. And then I'm going to reset last modified to equal the file's last modified. And then do the exact same thing that we do in our constructor. So it's going to look almost identical, which is pretty much that code right there. Or wait, this code right here. So we're going to get the buffered reader of the new file reader of f, and then we're going to get the material, set the variables for the material just like we do in that function that I just showed you. Then we're just going to simply set the offset, set the padding, and close the buffered reader. Now, the reason why I was able to just type this up for now and not worry about having to do it live is because this is the very easy part. So I can sit here and I can discuss how this stuff works before we get into the more difficult importing or re-importing. And like I just showed you, all we're doing, we're not creating anything new. We're not creating a new sprite and then resetting it, or going in and changing a whole bunch of different crap. We're just keeping the same sprite and just changing the variables. So it's very simple. So the next thing is we need to check if the window has gained focus. So say I have a window right here. I click out of the window and then I click back into the window. Then this function is going to be called. And it's going to check if focused. Then I'm just going to call sprite.refreshAll. And this is also temporary because on window changed focus, I am going to actually have a method in editor that is going to call all these refresh methods for us instead of doing it all inside of the application class, which I don't really like. So let's go through here. I'm going to have to import GLFW window focus callback. And just like window size callback, because it's almost exactly the same, right here we're going to need GLFW window focus callback, and here it's basically going to look exactly the same as here, except for instead of on window resized, it's on window changed focus, and of course it's of type GLFW window focus callback. Go ahead and delete that. And then it just calls this. Now the parameters that's going to take in is a long window, which is the current window that we're working out of, and Boolean focused, which tells us if we've gained focus or lost focus. So we will add some returns and all this, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to go inside of this method later on down the road, so it's good that we're going ahead and getting it all set up. So with that being said, that should be everything. I mean, like I said, it's very, very simple. So whenever we run the application, go ahead and begin. There you go. And we'll go over to sprites because that's what we just did. Okay, and to show this, if I click there and I double click there, nothing happens. So that's exactly how it should be. And if we double click this, then it pops up. All right, so gain focus, or lost focus, gained focus hasn't changed anything because nothing has changed. So if I come over here to offset of this sprite, I'll change it to 16, and if I save it off and I come back into this window, now it's changed. I don't know why that's... Is that like a completely different sprite or something? 32. Let's see. And 16. So I'll just change that back. Oh, no, it was 0, wasn't it? So offset 0. I think we're having some squishiness with our sprite though. I just noticed that. So it's actually shrinking. So something's going on with our math with that. And it looks like it's just with the X. Unless that's literally what it looks like. I don't know. Let's go into here. Anchor, rotation. There we go. See, that's what I mean by GLF, or the tiny FD. It just either lagging or not working sometimes. I don't know if it's just my computer or what, but... Alright, there we go. So now it's upright. Let's see. So that's 16. Go 32. Come back in. Okay, it's changed to that. So it looks like Y is working, but X is being weird, unless, like I said, that's just how it's supposed to be, but I don't think it is. I know I'm just kind of fiddling with it live, but let's see. I don't know. It may actually look like that. I would have to actually look at my sprite sheet. But, yeah, I believe that's... Because I think that's the rotating block. So it just kind of rotates in 2.5D, whatever. But as you can tell, it works perfectly fine. Everything updates. So if I click over here... It's not going to call, or it's going to call, but then it's just going to reject it immediately because nothing has changed. So now that I've discussed all that, let's do some of this coding ourselves. So let's do one of the other classes, and we will do that live. Let's do GY skin. Drop sprite over here. Alright, so basically all the ones where we created the file ourselves, like GY skin, GY, I think style is inside of skin. So GY skin, sprite, I don't know, I think there's a couple other file formats that we made ourselves. All of these they'll basically look exactly the same. So if we come into here, yeah. Scroll up. So here is the why is that different? Give me just a second. I'm going to look and see why this is different. Oh, duh. It's different because of this right here. So, I'll copy this. And I will paste it right here. BR equals. So what we're going to need is private, what is a private file f equals null. And a private long last modified. So now that we've got these two variables, we go ahead and set them, which it's not going to be name dot or name plus dot sprite. It's going to be name dot sprite or name dot skin. And that's it for that. All right, we come back into here. All right, so then go ahead and copy this. And below the get method, and instead of sprites, it'll be skins. And we don't have a refresh method yet, so let's go ahead and pull that. Last modified, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So now for this, let's see here. Texture equals texture dot find, br dot blah dot freaking blah, br dot close. We're just going to copy all this. Copy. And we are just going to paste it right there. All right. Make sure that buffered reader is just above the texture equals. Buffered reader. We don't need any of this split because that's just for the name. Okay, and that should be it for that. I can come back into here. Go ahead and do this. So if focused, refresh the sprites, and I will refresh the GUI skin. Refresh all. Here we go. Obviously don't need material. All right, and that should do it. All right, so let's check this out. Again, I even forgot what all GUI skin does. Let's see here. Skins, default GUI. So it's what, just the name and the texture that it takes? Oh, I don't have something. Hold on. I'll have to open this up. So I might as well just go ahead and show this. Sprites. So we will go into here. Here's my project. Go into skins. Oh. Oh, really? Do I not have a skin inside of that folder? Oh, I'm just using default GUI skin, aren't I? Alright, let's pull this up. Button header. Oh, yeah, because, well, it's a GUI skin, and we haven't done real-time GUI inside of the game yet, so obviously I haven't created one. Wow, okay, awesome. Alright, so skins is our own format. Ooh, we could do materials. Let's do materials. Right, material. So now we will do the exact same thing for materials. So come into Sprite. And copy this. Paste it right here. And comment that out for a second. Change that to material. Oh, we haven't created the variables yet. So it's private file f equals null private long last modified. So then that sets that. Go ahead and delete that. And underneath the get method, paste it in there. Not sprites, we need materials and materials. Now for our refresh method itself, just copy that whole thing and paste it in here. And then just like how we did with GUI skin, what we're going to be changing is this stuff right here. So we need to go find that. I'm just going to copy all of this. Copy. And paste it right there. We don't need, did I leave that add on here? Styles.add style. We don't need that. We need rect offset. It's called offset, right? It's a GUI style. it would be Give me just a second on this. Okay, I see how to do that now. Okay, so right here we will say string style name equals line dot split, and then the first one, so that way we have the style name already set up. Now we need GUI style equals get and then style name. And then we'll say if let's see here, if style does not equal null, so if we've already got a style for that name, then we want to do that. If not, if the style is null, then I will say style equals and then pass in the style. So if it does not equal null, then we need to say style dot. Can we not set the texture, really? Okay, I will just have to come back to texture then. So texture dot offset equals offset, and then style dot padding equals padding. There we go. So now if the style does not equal null, so if the style that we're reading in already exists in the current GUI skin that we're editing, then it's going to just set the offsets that have been read in to that style. Now, if that style has not been created, then it's going to create an entirely new style, and then it's going to add it to our list of styles. All right, so that works. And we'll mess with texture later. We may have to add some extra methods to get that and whatnot. Make sure there's no changes to anything that doesn't need to be changed. So we'll go into materials, and instead of saying materials.add this, materials have already been added, so we do not need to add that to the list. So go into application. Let's go materials dot refresh all. Let's see if we get any errors or anything. Oh, apparently material dot refresh all. See if we get any kind of errors or any kind of glitchiness or anything with it. Should work just fine. Let's see here. Right, materials, default game material. Using default game shader. The color is 111, so let's change that to let's say 0 1 1 1. Why not? Alrighty, that works. So it read it in and it changed everything that needed to be changed. Awesome. So now we have all of our custom file formats updating on the fly, just like that. So in the next episode, we will do, and I'll do this live, I promise. We will do materials, possibly shaders. I know we need to do textures, so that's going to be my big thing that we need to hit on is textures. Because I know a lot of times whenever I'm making a game or whatever, I'll think that it looks good inside of my application for making textures, and then I'll put it into the game, and then when I put it in the game, I'm like, it needs a few extra tweaks. So I'm always going back and forth from the editor and my texture editor. So I know that's a big thing that we need to do. So the ones that we need now are textures, shaders, and scripts. But outside of that should be about it, because we're not going to be, we also have scene files. Scene files you won't be able to double click on and it popping up or changing whatever, because you don't need to be changing the scene file from the actual file itself anyways. It should be inside of the editor. So we shouldn't have to mess with that. So it's just those 3 data types. So we will get those done next time. All right, thanks for watching, guys.